This episode of Movies Please is brought to you in part by Movie Palette. Get a discount code at the end of today's episode. Eyebrows raised when it was announced that Rob Zombie would be directing a reboot of the Munsters. Zombie has directed some solid films throughout his career, but his focus has been on R-rated horror. Hence, people wondered how faithful Zombie's Munsters would be to the 1960s series. The good news is that Zombie's Munsters is a love letter to the original show. The bad news is that it's not a very well-crafted one. The Munsters tells the backstory of the lovable, if macabre, family. In Transylvania, the Count, aka Grandpa, and Lily live together in a castle that the Count's ex is trying to legally claim. Meanwhile, Lily is searching for her soulmate. She finds him in a monster created by Dr. Henry Augustus Wolfgang, who sets out to create the perfect creature by collecting the best body parts from the most talented people. Unfortunately, his bumbling assistant grabbed the brain of an idiot, thus resulting in Herman Munster, a wannabe stand-up comedian slash rock star. Can the Count and his new son-in-law Herman overlook their differences, create a home with Lily, and live horribly ever after? This movie does a decent job at telling the backstory of the Munsters. Everything from how Herman met Lily, why they moved to LA, and how they adopted Spot for a pet. Yes, we do see Spot here in all of his dragon puppet glory. Plus, there are cameos from some of the cast members of the Munsters TV series. Again, Zombie's Munsters is a love letter to that original TV series, even if the movie's story is a bit slight. Unfortunately, the movie's intentions are better than its results. Zombie's Munsters looks cheap and garish. Part of this is due to it being a Universal 1440 production. Universal 1440 sequels have small budgets and fast production timelines. Some of their movies are only a step up in quality than the Asylum knockoffs. To be fair, The Munsters comes off better than some Universal 1440 movies because you can tell Zombie tried to get creative and work around the low budget. But not all of the creative choices work. Again, the lighting is garish, and you can say Zombie was trying to recreate the lighting of, say, a Halloween store or display, but there's a way to do it that looks better than what we see here. This was shot in Budapest, Hungary, and they used some of the locations there well. Except it's awkward whenever characters go for a stroll through a town or a district, and the movie keeps reusing the same castle-esque exteriors, so everything looks the same more or less, depending on how many neon lights the set designer hung for that scene. As for makeup, Herman, the Count, and Lily, they look okay, but the supporting characters look as if they got their masks and makeup from Party City. Seriously, characters like the creature from the Black Lagoon look like they're just wearing a mask they got off a rack from Spirit Halloween. Another downside is the film's uneven tone. Sometimes it feels like Zombie is going for a grindhouse vibe, other times a late-night B-movie, sometimes it feels like a Universal monster picture. To its credit, Zombie's Munsters does try to mimic the humor of the original series as well, with varying success. Some of the jokes land. I laughed out loud a couple of times, but some of the jokes flop, and I think the ones that flop are often due to the movie's weak musical score that fails to complement what's on screen. The movie also incorporates some baffling sound effects for jokes, such as slide whistles that seem more suited for red letter media sketches. Zombie's Munsters tries to recreate the physical humor of the original series, such as when people would see Herman and they'd react by fainting or running out of the room at 10 times their speed. But it's often shot in a way that recalls the 90s Saban movies like Casper Spirited Away instead of the Munsters TV show. And speaking of how it's shot, the cinematography leaves much to be desired. Zombie's Munsters looks like it was shot on an iPhone. Scenes have little to no shallow depth of field, images look flat, scenes that incorporate green screen look unfinished. Again, I chalk this up to the schedule of it being a Universal 1440 production because the cinematographer, Zoran Popovic, has done some decent work. Consider this. When they made a sequel to Unbroken, Popovic was the guy they thought could best replicate Roger Deakins' cinematography on a low budget. No, Popovic isn't as good as Deakins. I'm not saying that at all. Not at all. Not one bit. What I am saying is Popovic is a lot better than the cinematography in the Munsters suggest. Regarding its visual style, Zombie's Munsters has a gimmick in which characters like the Count and Lily react to things, and those green screen reaction shots are of their heads or their busts against an ugly animated background. So in other words, Lily might see Herman, and then we suddenly cut to her looking at him in this infatuated fashion with some garish cartoon background. It's worth mentioning because the movie does this relatively often, and it looks awful every time. So now that I've spent a good deal of time bashing the Munsters, what works about it? Well, for one thing, the performances, for the most part. Sherry Moon Zombie does well enough as Lily. All these roles are meant to be over the top, so I can't say she was too over the top in this scene or that scene. I think she does fine in the role. Jeff Daniel Phillips takes the role of Herman and makes it his own. Admittedly, it seems as if he couldn't quite settle on a voice or personality for Herman. Phillips' Herman Munster is part Fred Gwynn, part Frankenfurter, and part teen boy going through puberty. 1 minute Phillips sounds like the Herman we all know and love. The next minute he sounds like a 13-year-old whose voice is changing. But when Phillips' Herman works, he works. He nails the Herman Munster laugh. And Herman's introductory scene is loads of fun, and in black and white, as the rest of the movie arguably should have been. The twist with how Herman got his brain is handled well, and Herman being a lame stand-up comedian offers a new side to that character I didn't know I wanted. But let's talk about the MVP of the Munsters here, Daniel Roebuck as the Count. Roebuck is one of those character actors who is always reliable and does a great job with material he's given. He's one of those actors whom you wonder why they're not bigger. In the Munsters, Roebuck isn't trying to replicate Al Lewis's iconic performance as the Count, otherwise known as Grandpa. Instead, he's doing his own thing and doing it quite well. Will there be a sequel to Zombies Munsters? Well, no spoilers, but the movie ends on kind of an odd note with Lily's brother Lester that suggests maybe a sequel. This being the family's backstory, I guess the original TV series could be the sequel in a way. Also, I'm not even sure whom Zombies Munsters is for. The movie's content is family friendly, but its tone not so much in a way. I think kids will be bored by it. Overall, Rob Zombie's The Munsters feels like a fan film by a person who is passionate about the material, but that's not enough to recommend it. The film looks especially bad when you compare it to Barry Sonnenfeld's Addams Family movies. Heck, it looks bad even compared to Addams Family Reunion. I don't think Zombies the Munsters is worse than, say, Munsters Today, but I do think 90s TV movies Here Comes the Munsters and The Munsters' Scary Little Christmas are better updates of the property. The saving grace of Zombies the Munsters is its performances, and I would be open to another Munsters project with these actors. In time, this movie could even grow a cult following, but I don't know if I'll be part of it. I give Rob Zombie's The Munsters 1.5 out of 4 stars. Whether you're living in a castle in Transylvania or a mansion in LA, Movie Palette has you covered. Their palettes feature stripes of colors carefully chosen by their team of artists. Every stripe represents a color of a particular scene in the movie. Love monster flicks? Well, you can see your favorite movie portrayed in one image with vibrant colors representing the movie's most important scenes and plot development. I have a Dark Knight movie palette and I absolutely love it. You can get a 15% discount today by using the code MOVIES15. That's MOVIES15. Thanks to Movie Palette for co-sponsoring this video. And thanks to you for watching. Let me know your thoughts about Rob Zombie's The Munsters in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks again.